Hey everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a 23-year-old competitive boulderer from Canada, currently living in Montreal. Welcome back to the COMPCLIMB training series, where I record most of my training, provide in-depth analysis of every session, and just chat about climbing with an emphasis on competition. So here we are climbing at Bloc again. We have been having a lot of sessions here recently, and there are a few reasons for this. Number one, it's Maddie and I's home gym now, and it just feels nice to climb here, But also, I realized I don't think I've mentioned this yet in the videos, but Bloc sets 3 times a week. I'm pretty sure that's the most out of any of the gyms that you see that Maddie and I sort of circulate through in these videos. Like, it's kind of ridiculous actually. It's so many, they set like a lot and so frequently, and the sectors that they set are pretty sizable too. It's not like they're just like setting a little section every time. So I kind of realized this, a couple weeks into our stay. I was saying to Maddie, wow, like they're always setting here when we're climbing, and there's always like new boulders. How often do they set? And then we actually looked, and it's 3 days a week, which is very impressive. Not a lot of pure bouldering gyms can keep up with a schedule like that, and there's just always like new fresh boulders up to try. And I think that's going to be like, not only is it like the home gym syndrome, but just the sheer amount of setting they do is probably going to be one of the reasons why we'll probably end up climbing like mostly at Bloc, just because there's always so many new boulders, and it's always like super refreshing to just, every time you go in for a boulder session, you at least have one new set, which is a lot of fun. And so anyway, here we are starting with a few moderates, as you can see, before hopping on this red one that we tried briefly in the last episode, I think. But yeah, there was a definite theme of the training going into today's episode that I wanted to accomplish. And that was to basically try everything. So like the first North American Cup is not so far away anymore. At this point, it's probably like a couple weeks out. No. What am I talking about? It's like 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, something like that. And so it kind of hit me. I was thinking about it, and I said, whoa, yeah, I gotta stop just going to a gym and like projecting the hardest boulders there. I need to make sure that I'm trying everything, getting all of the moderates in, getting a whole lot of different styles of climbing in, and really just refreshing all of my comp style movement patterns and getting as much beta as I can into my human computer system of beta, Also, here I am revisiting this boulder super quick. So I kind of was like raging on this boulder the other day. It was really hot in the gym when I was trying this boulder, and I was getting overheated and frustrated and rapid firing. And so this boulder went much nicer when I walked up to it with like a nice level head, and I was just chilled out. And that boulder is absolutely my favorite thing up in the gym right now. It is so pretty, and obviously has such a cool move at the start. That one was a really, really epic comp set by Chris. Super fun boulder, and I was just like super satisfied after I sent that boulder, because it was just so nice and it sort of spoke to me. So that was a good one. But yeah, I have been really feeling the pressure of the comp coming up, and I can tell too that, especially throughout today's episode, you're going to notice we're trying a lot of boulders that you haven't seen me get on yet in Bloc, even though they have been up for a while. Like, a good example of this is just this white boulder we're trying here. This one isn't super new. It's been set for a while, but I just haven't got to it yet because I've been caught up in projecting the top 3 or 4 hardest boulders in the gym, like the projects, and I just I've always been meaning to come and tackle like the 8s and 9s, but I haven't had time yet. And so this episode, the theme was, really I need to go try everything and start getting as much beta in my system and as many movement patterns activated as possible, because obviously that's what we want to do right before going into a competition to properly peak. So let's check out this white boulder. I'm falling a bunch on it, as you can see. I'm trying this foot kick method. So the foothold that we're jumping to is dual techs on the outside ring, and then it has a patch of texture in the middle, obviously, and it has a tiny little screw-on foot chip. And so I'm like kind of trying to foot stab and land on this little foot chip, or hope that I sort of have my foot land on the texture or something. But I could, I think it was on my first attempt. Yeah, I tried to static this first move, and it didn't feel like I could really do it. And so I said, okay, let me try this sort of foot stab method. And it felt really hard, but it felt possible. And I had a couple tries where I was close. So I kind of got caught up in trying this wacky beta that I knew probably wasn't right, but it felt doable, so I just kept trying it. And then I finally find this beta where I use the black volume, obviously, to statically move over to the sloper. But yeah, I originally didn't think that black volume would be good enough to use, but that in combination with like a heel to pincer on the start volume foot was made for like a super cool technical move over to the sloper. I think that white boulder and the blue boulder are actually probably my top 2 favorite boulders in the gym. I really like the technical elements and cool moves on those boulders. They're really creative. But yeah, as you can see, we are continuing with trying all of the moderates, and I'm glad that I really committed to doing this style of training in this episode, because as we're going and doing these boulders, I can feel a bit of rust, honestly. And what I mean by that is just not being able to execute a boulder in the V7, 8 to 9 range on like my first go or my second go. And that is kind of exactly the skill you want to have be super fresh and activated going into a competition, because a lot of the times that is exactly what competing is about, is going to do a V7, 8, 9 on your flash go or second go. Now when we're getting up to the World Cup level, that's a bit different, but in regards to like the North American Cups, which is the primary focus of this season obviously for me, like V7, 8, 9 flashes and second goes is like kind of the name of the game. And then maybe you'll have like a super physical boulder that's maybe pushing V10, maybe 11, but you might see that in like a qualifier. You could see it in a semifinal. But I think it is definitely super, super important that I have my 7, 8, 9 flash skills like super activated and primed. And I can tell, I could tell during these sessions that skill was not super activated. And so this is sort of day 1 of me committing to activating it. And I could feel like a bit of the rust was shaking off even just throughout this whole episode. And like I said, I was really glad that I decided to do it. And so now here we are trying a new boulder. This one is actually like a relatively new set, a very tricky V9 slab. And so obviously the crux of this boulder is working with these 2 little foot chips on like where my left foot is now. So these foot chips are really interesting. I thought that they looked pretty decent and that this boulder wouldn't be too bad, but there's like some very interesting elements, especially this right foothold is probably better than the left, but it's tilted on a worse angle. And then the left one is probably worse than the right, but it's flatter and it's like a better angle. And so I was having to decide if I wanted to do a foot cross or try to go to the left one first with my left foot. Couldn't quite figure it out in this morning session. I put quite a few tries on it, and actually my toes were starting to get really tired. And this was actually a bit of a theme with this day of training as well. Not only from working that boulder like quite a lot in this morning session, but now here we are moving into session 2, where we're going to try some more slabs. And by the end of the day, my feet were actually really tired. My toes were burning, and it's honestly quite good, I think, because that means I worked my feet really hard and I worked my slab skills really hard, which is important. So it's actually a good sign that my feet were sore. And the fact that I haven't felt this in a while means that I haven't been putting the reps in on slab. So that's pretty good. So yeah, here we are for session 2. I guess I forgot to mention in the first session, wasn't feeling the best. Let's say I was like 6.5 out of 10. This session though, I was feeling quite a lot better. This was like a strong feeling session and I was psyched. So I'd say this one was like an 8 out of 10. And that meant that I could put some proper work into this red boulder, which is this super, okay. I said the blue and the white boulder are my favorite in the gym. This has got to be in the top 3 as well. Like, this boulder is super pretty. Like, the aesthetics on this one is crazy. And it climbs really nicely as well. This is a 5-star. I don't know who said it, but they did a good job. And so you'll notice that I have found some new beta. I kind of found it in the morning when I briefly put a couple tries on, but I could tell that I wasn't going to be sticky enough in the morning to properly try this boulder. And so I decided to save my newfound beta for the second session, which we are trying now. So before I get back to the newfound beta, I was trying to see if I could do something where I hang on the second last sloper and move the foot out. But I think it's on this attempt here. I managed to like dead hang the sloper, which is just feels like absolute limit. Like, this hold is so bad. But then I realized that, okay, I'm hanging on this hold now, but there's actually no way that I can get my foot out there, which meant that I ruled everything out except for this knee bar. So I found that I could, from the pinch, swing my left foot all the way up to the foot chip and actually set the knee bar before I kind of try and work my way through the second last hold and up to the finish. So in this attempt, you notice I used the green crimp to set the knee bar, and that allowed me to set the knee bar a bit better than I was when I was just grabbing on the sloper, and that allowed me to have a bit more wiggle room and figure out that it was better to match the second last with my palm on my left hand rather than just trying to like grab it. And so at this point, I knew the boulder was possible, and I was psyched. I had the tricks to really set this knee bar well, because it's really bad actually, and then palm with the left hand and match, and then hopefully the finish is like matchable. Actually, I haven't really got quite a lot of purchase on the finish yet to see if it works, but yeah, this boulder was super doable, but setting this knee bar was super finicky. And if I had like any bit of imperfection in the knee bar, there was no chance that I could do the last sequence. And then, as you can see here, I probably put maybe 2 or 3 more attempts on that boulder than I should have, because those last like 3 tries, my knee was on fire. And then it finally got to the point where I just couldn't push through the pain anymore. And I actually have to save that red boulder for like I have to take a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks off of it or something. Probably wait till it's about to get taken down before I try that again, because I can't push through the pain. My knee is now too shaved up from doing that knee bar over and over again. But I definitely want to come back to that boulder because I actually think I can do it after figuring out all the beta. So yeah, I quickly put a few more tries on that purple paddle. That one also feels possible, but I can only put a few tries on it at a time during a session before I risk like, going into a rage and losing a bunch of skin. So I'm gonna basically just say every time I have a session at Rose Bloc, I'll put like 3 or 4 tries on the purple paddle at some point, and maybe one of those attempts I'll stick it. And that's kind of where I am at with that boulder. And then this red one, we've also kind of done a similar thing where we have started to just put like a few tries on throughout the sessions. I haven't really properly projected this one yet. And actually I think it's just because it feels like so anti-style and like sticky base that I almost don't want to put the time into that boulder that I think it's going to take. And so I think I'm just going to forfeit on that red one. And I don't think I'll try that one again because we have some other boulders I want to try that feel more doable for me. But that red one definitely goes. Like I know Victor Boudran sent it and Kinder dropped the finish hold, I think. I think he like slipped or something. So yeah, the boulder isn't like too hard. It's just super anti-style and I don't think I can do it. So we are revisiting this purple slab, and I'm able to make my way through the sequence on my first attempt here in the session. And this was actually like a previous tip of the day of mine from a while ago, where I said to not overlook like calf fatigue and toe fatigue. So when I worked that boulder for too long in the morning session, my toes got to the point where they were too tired to stand on those footholds optimally. And I could no longer like climb super well on those feet and have a chance at doing that sequence. But after coming to that boulder with like sort of fresh toes in the second session, I was able to do it on my first go, which was cool. And I think that this is an important thing to remember, is to not overlook the toe fatigue. So this is a good reminder of a previous tip of the day. And so here we are hopping on this other slab, which I have yet to try. This one is a V7, so I kind of expected it to be sort of chill, but Rose Bloc is good at making you work for the technical boulders. And I have to make sure that I don't go into slabs at Rose Bloc thinking they're going to be chill, because this ending sequence is quite tricky actually. And speaking of this ending sequence, this finish match sequence is actually going to feature today's tip of the day. So as you can see, I was kind of struggling with the end on my first attempt, and I fell trying to just balance on my right foot with no hands and match this like little nothing finish hold, just sort of a touch finish. And so today's tip of the day is going to be something that I find is actually a strength of mine. I find that I'm able to see these sequences on slabs a lot of the times, and especially in competition, and sometimes will actually give me an edge. And that is to sometimes balance on your heel instead of your toe for like a no hands position, or like especially like this sort of touch finish, where we're not actually grabbing anything. So this foothold is like kind of decent, but I actually think that I need to revisit this boulder because I still don't really know why it was difficult to stand on my right toe. I just know that I feel like I'm being pushed away from the wall and my chest is kind of pushing me out, and the foothold just isn't quite and giving me enough to really stand on it and balance well and really like have enough room to play with to reach all the way to the finish hold. But as on this attempt, we're going to notice that I start playing around and sort of on the fly decide to use my heel on this hold and just balance on my heel instead of my toe. And what this does actually is, because I'm on my heel, it allows me to control my torque a bit better and kind of control my direction and allow me to sort of lean over with no hands. And whereas like if I was just on my toe, I wouldn't be able to sort of control my rotation as well as I can on my heel. So it basically creates like more of a stable surface, a stable platform for me to like balance on and really control my torque and my rotation. And I think that this is often overlooked, and it seems kind of weird to just balance on your heel rather than your toe a lot of times. But I think if you find yourselves in situations, especially when you have this kind of hold that's like really protruding on a slab, but you just feel like you can't stand on it with your toe, try just using your heel. And what this can do is, yeah, like I said, sort of allow you to control your rotation a bit more and control your balance a bit better than you would on your toe, because it would just be like a little bit more unstable, and you have less power with the toe in sometimes in this kind of position, and more power in your heel. So yeah, tip of the day is try out the balancing on the heel for no hands moves sometimes on slab. I definitely think that this move could go with the toe. I think maybe a way I could have optimized was to try and work my left foot to the left side of the big red hold on the right before I tried to balance up with my right toe. But I hadn't yet figured that bit of beta out, and so on the fly, when I was sort of cruxing out, I decided to try heel, and it worked really well. You can see I looked like much more stable, and I could really kind of pistol squat the rest of that move out. But yeah, that was a cool example of that. And so there were a couple more slabs that I could try up in the gym. I decided to cut off the moderates at V6. So I didn't try like the V5 slabs just because they seemed like quite doable. So I said, okay, I'm gonna try every slab in the gym that was V6 and up. And so at this point, I think we've done that. We've tried all the slabs except for this one here that we're getting on. This was the last slab in the gym that I had yet to try. And they're actually setting a new slab while I was having the session, which I'm sure we'll get to eventually. But yeah, this little wall is actually kind of fun. I don't think I've climbed on this slab in a video yet, and it's actually just because I kind of forget about it from time to time. So this is like all the way on the left side of the gym, kind of at the back. Well, no, like at the front, at the side. They have this like mini slab wall, and they happen to have set sort of like a comp slab boulder little station here. And I have been continuously like forgetting to get on these boulders in our past few sessions, just because this wall is like, you know, kind of tucked in the side, and I don't see it every time I'm walking around the gym. So I remembered today, and also the theme of today was to try all of the boulders, so it extra helped me remember to get on this boulder. And as you can see, this is like quite a funny boulder. All these edges are like quite slopey, and I think, do I use all of them? Maybe I skipped one of them, but it's actually kind of a really cool boulder where you really need to use all these holds to sort of inch your way around this arete and yeah, kind of transition your weight over so that you can lay back on this finish. But yeah, this little comp set was quite a lot of fun. And actually this is the point in the session where my feet were actually really burning now. Like standing, like putting so much pressure through your toes for like a long period of time through a session when you try like a lot of slab boulders can be really, really tiring. And I actually think it's important as well to make sure you treat your slab climbing as though you would treat your power climbing in terms of the way you approach it mentally. And this is actually something I put into practice a lot, and I find that I was extra having to think about today as well. An example of what I mean by this is make sure you don't judge your slab climbing ability when your feet are tired. I found in the past, a lot of the times, if I was working like a bunch of slabs in a row and maybe I got to one near the end of my session, I would say, and like I started to climb poorly on that boulder because my feet were tired, I sort of just had it in my head saying, oh, I think my feet just hurt because I've been wearing my shoes for a while. And so I didn't realize that, you know, my toes and my calves were actually fatigued, and that's why it's sort of like, you know, the same thing as though your fingers were tired. If your fingers and your grip were tired when you were trying a power boulder, you wouldn't judge yourself for that. You would just sort of accept that you're tired. And so it's the same sort of thing with slab. if you've been trying a slab for a while or you've tried lots of slabs together, I mean, take into account that your toes are kind of like your fingers, you know? If they're tired and they're hurting, you're going to be performing less. And in the past, I used to sort of not remember to think about it like that all the time. And I would say, wow, I'm doing really bad on this slab. I guess I am just still like really crap at slab. And yeah, I think it's just important to really kind of adapt this mindset that your toes and your edging power are actually quite similar to your fingers and your crimping power in a lot of ways. And you can train them, and it's important to like train them with as much dedication and focus as you would like either or, you know? Like I find you should practice footwork and edging and smearing technique as though you were, you know, training finger power to get stronger at crimps. That's just sort of like a nice fundamental way I like to look at being a climber overall, especially as a comp climber. I find it's important to like your lower body skills and footwork skills are almost just as strong as your finger and grip strength in comp style bouldering these days. But yeah, anyway, that was kind of a bit of a tangent I went on, but it was actually something I was really thinking about throughout these sessions, so I thought I'd talk about it. And in the meantime, as you can see, we are having another kilter board session. I kind of just decided to skip the spray wall again, and this time it wasn't because we were having like a meeting at Roast Block. It was just because having that one kilter board session the other day like reignited the kilter board addiction, kind of. Like for those who remember, when I went through that sort of phase where I just climbed a lot of kilter board and got really addicted to it, yeah, it was like really difficult to exit that phase. Actually, I was having a lot of fun on the kilter board when we were training on it for like about a week or two, and so it's like a dangerous source of addiction, you know? It's not necessarily optimal for me to be training kilter right before a comp or like the comp season, but you know, it's very similar to spray wall training, so it's not too big of a deal if I just substitute it out. And it got me like psyched, you know, to go to the gym and train kilter board rather than spray wall, and that in itself is important. So yeah, I was just like to have another fun kilter board session, so I decided to do so. And now this kilter session is going to be a lot cooler than the last one, actually. So the last one we did the other day at Roast Block, I was feeling like a 6 out of 10. Super tired, super gassed. This one, I was feeling like strong for some reason. I was expecting to be tired, like we did a lot of bouldering yesterday. But actually, it was a lot of vert and slab and like technical stuff, which was by design as well. Like I was going for that. But what it resulted in was me actually having a bit more grip power to work with today, which was super nice. And so I was probably feeling like an 8 out of 10 for this session, which meant that I could try some harder boulders. Last time we were just sticking to V10 the whole way, but now the theme of this session was that I wanted to try some 12s. And as you can see, we start off with a nice send of a Jimmy V12. And now this boulder here is going to have to do with the thumbnail. So this is the V12 that we end up flashing in this episode. But that being said, I kind of just went a little bit clickbaity with the thumbnail. This boulder, first I want to say that it's absolute 5-star. Like this thing was a lot of fun. Obviously, this sort of one-arm crimp dyno move, very cool. And it was actually set by a fellow Rose Block athlete, Aiden Doyle, who is very strong, and he like coaches and sets as well at Rose Block, and so that was a cool boulder by him. But yeah, like I said, I kind of was being a little bit clickbaity with the thumbnail. I don't think I'm strong enough to flash V12, so I can't claim V12 of that boulder. But honestly, I think it's sort of probably has to do with like your span on that move, honestly. the shorter your wingspan, the harder of a boulder that is going to be for you, actually. So I'm kind of in the middle, actually, I guess. I don't think I've ever mentioned my sort of like dimensions, I guess you could say. I am about like 5'11", and my wingspan is actually quite the same as my height. I think I'm like +1 or something. And I weigh about 150 pounds is sort of the average. 150 pounds if I'm like doing well with my diet. Maybe I usually will hover around like 151, 152. So yeah, that shoulder move was just like a little bit extended for me, but just enough that I could control the swing and ride into the right arm crimp. But yeah, that boulder was super sick. And so now here we are moving on to another V12. This one ends up being the last boulder of the session. And I found that like if you remember, I was mentioning in the kilter session where we did V10 after V10 after V10, I was getting like fatigued at the same increment very consistently, and it was quite fun to see that. And it was sort of happening again in this session, but now since I was trying V12, after every attempt the fatigue would sort of hit harder, and so I could feel myself slowly running out of power as I was trying this boulder here. And so I had to like get really fired up and say, okay, if I don't send this soon, I'm going to be out of gas. So I had to try really hard and get a send of like one more V12. But yeah, that one was really cool. And as for like the kilter grades, honestly, yeah, like I guess they're kind of soft-ish a lot of the times. So whether or not these are like, actually V12s that I'm putting down in a few tries, it's a bit debatable, but it's sort of fun to send what you could call a kilter V12. So I think we had a fun session where we got like a send of 3, kilter V12s, and I was feeling strong. So yeah, that was quite an enjoyable kilter board session, and I just sort of rode the wave of my kilter psych. And so, as you can see, we are hopping on some boulders now. And the reason for this is because usually this session would be listed as a spray wall session, or no, a campus session, followed by a bit of spray wall afterwards. And so, we're sort of just substituting it for a kilter board session, followed by a bit of bouldering afterwards. So we're taking the skeleton of what the training program is listed as and just modifying it a bit with a similar theme of training still in mind. And I like to do this from time to time during a training program if I'm just more psyched on doing one thing instead of the other. And I think it is important to cater to your psych during training as well. And I say this a lot. Psyched training and motivated training and doing stuff that you want to do is going to result in higher quality training than going and repping out something that you're just not as psyched on a lot of the time. And that's just one of my core philosophies for training. But everybody's got their own style. Sometimes people will say, no, I gotta go do exactly what's written down, and if that works for you, then that works for you. But I'm sort of more of a I think like it actually is like not so cheesy as well. I think it's actually important, well, at least for me it was important to adapt the idea that fun and having fun in training is very, very important, just for so many reasons. Like for longevity, as being an athlete, it's important to really not burn out, and also to get higher quality training. Like fun should be an extremely important element and factor in training, in my opinion. So that's what we're doing during this session. We're having fun on the kilter board and having fun on the comp boulders. And this purple one in particular was super cool and super, super hard. I kind of underestimated this boulder before I tried it. I always forget that these purple pinches at Bloc are like extra slippery. So I'm used to climbing on these holds in other gyms, but like the ones at Bloc are just have like a layer of like slip on them that I always forget about. And so the sequence at the end there is super, super hard. And I found that my pinching strength was like not there in this session because I was sort of used to just edging a bunch on the kilter board. So I definitely I can't wait to come back to Rose Block and try that purple comp boulder, because that one was like super, super sick and super hard actually. Like I said, I underestimated that boulder. That is going to take a lot of work to do. There are so many hard moves and low percentage moves on that, but they all feel super doable, which is good. It's always better to have a bunch of those moves instead of like some just bottleneck. So yeah, I can't wait to come back and really work that comp boulder, hopefully with a bit more pinching power on my side. So we are moving on to one more boulder of this session, this technical blue V9. I'm like really cruxing out at the beginning here, trying to work into the undercling. The undercling was quite bad actually, made for a tricky move at the beginning. And then I'm about to get got here on the finish match, which is actually very hard as well. The finish hold is bad. It kind of looks good, but it's like kind of greasy and bad. And you really have to pull hard with this toe hook to match this finish. And I'm gonna get like a desperate send of it on this attempt. But I couldn't tell if this boulder was like feeling super, super hard because I was like powering out at this point in the session, or if it's just anti-style. But when I send this boulder on this attempt, I was like very satisfied because it felt very hard for me, especially this finish match. Like we're gonna see, I'm just sort of, I've got the shakes and I'm just desperately bringing in this left hand to match the finish. But yeah, this blue V9 was a little gem here, a little 5-star boulder, some cool moves, very pretty. That's just how it goes at Rose Block. Those are the kind of blocks we have up all the time, and I love training on them. So at this point in the episode and the training, we have done like a lot of climbing, and I was very happy and satisfied that I achieved what I set out to do, and that was to try everything and try lots of boulders. And I think I probably tried every boulder in the gym in this episode. Okay, other than the ones that I've already sent. I tried everything in this episode. I at least like put some attempts on it, minus like a few. So I tried everything V8 and up, minus a few like pure crimp lines. And the reason I don't always try these boulders is like because I can sort of train finger power on the kilter board or the hangboard, obviously. But also I sometimes will avoid crimpy boulders, especially with like super small crimps when we're getting close to comp season, because this is it's a very important time for me not to be getting splits. And so if we're trying crimp lines, where it's just crimp, especially small crimp after small crimp, that's exactly like a boulder like that is going to really, really increase your risk of getting a split, just like on a fingertip. And I really want to maximize, this month of peaking going into the first comp. And I don't want to have to be dealing with split tips, or especially, when we get like really close to the comp, I got to really be careful about getting splits because I don't want to compete with a split. That is not how we optimize. And so yeah, there's like a V10 that I avoided in Rose Block today because it had a couple crimps that looked like razors and looked like prime time split territory. So I just had to resist trying that boulder. I do actually enjoy like climbing on that style of boulder, but yeah, it's like I said, this close-ish to a comp, I really try to avoid just the pure crimp lines. And that's actually, I do like the kilter board for training finger power. Like that's also another reason I kind of wanted to train on it today, is because I felt myself avoiding some crimp boulders, but I also want to make sure I'm not avoiding grabbing on like finger intensive holds. And the kilter board is like really ergonomic, and for the most part we're not grabbing small crimps unless you actually are grabbing some of those footholds. So it's good for not splitting right before a competition, which is why I sort of allowed myself to climb on it today as well. But yeah, here we are finishing the episode of training with our hangboard. This was our best hangboard, or my best crimp hangs in a while actually. It's been a while since I've hung over 105 pounds, and that's because we're sort of getting exactly into the territory where, okay, now I really want to start hitting my benchmark, like going into peak season. And I've actually got a few questions about this recently in the comments is if I have like any benchmarks I try to hit for like a peak competition. One of the, actually no, probably the only benchmark in terms of strength I try to hit is I want to do a 130 pound hang on the small Beastmaker crimp in a half crimp position for 5 seconds. If I can do that, I'm feeling like super solid about my finger strength. And so the idea is, okay, I just did my first session of 110 pounds. Now, as we get closer to the first North American Cup, I want to do a 130 pound hang like the session right before the comp. Well, you know, whenever my last hangboard session is right before the comp. And so let's start pushing the weight and see if we can hit that. And I think it'll happen. So yeah, that wraps up a fun episode of training at Rose Block. In the next episode, we're going to climb at Beta Block. That's going to be fun. And that episode, well, so yeah, tomorrow's a rest day for me. And then the next day, we're going to do 2 sessions of bouldering at Beta Block. And then I actually have a much needed rest week. So it's kind of a shorter rest week. It's going to be 4 days. And that'll be nice to like get my skin all nice and reset and go in to the next bit of training like nice and fresh. And then we won't have another rest week until the first North American Cup. So this is like my last rest week before we compete. So I gotta milk it and soak it up. But yeah, next episode should be Beta Block. Look forward to that. Insert catch-up video show here.